right now. Had a long conversation with a dear friend yesterday, and we're talking about the news. And we both decided it's dead. There's no such thing anymore. That absolutely everything that is broadcast has everything to do with selling something. You want to get a big listenership. You want to get a big following. It's kind of like, we could all really empathize with Greta, with Thunberg. The angry, the planet is dying person, and we spend all of our time following somebody whose last name is Kardashian. We spend all of our money doing the Kardashian thing and not doing much that Greta is talking about at all. We give her a lot of, lip service and everything, but guess where we're designed as a culture and the system to go? Greta gets a couple of minutes at the United Nations with all the world leaders so that they now have a poster child for a few minutes. And then let's get back to the Kardashians. Are they pregnant? Are they fat? Are they skinny? Did they have a divorce? What's going on, right? So the truth is, millennials and Generation X and Generation Z, they really want to have a world that works, but they spend all their money and their time either online with their cell phone, which, by the way, consumes tremendous amount of energy. You don't see that in your phone, but there are hundreds of thousands of servers running 24/7 all over the planet that have to be powered all the time in order for you to get that little image on your phone. So I presence that from the standpoint of, where in the world do we get our information from that we make the next step forward with? Well, I say it comes from your internal clock. And Ken, you can maybe spend a minute or two talking about our bullshit detectors. But the world is at a real deficit in terms of training people to trust their own mind. And I think that's the next step forward here, that people are now going to start saying what's going on, and do we really have to listen to the people that are constantly telling us what our next thought should be? And oh, by the way, what would be the really great thing in 2022 for me personally? What do I really want to do that has nothing to do with anybody else, or the right brand of shoes, or the right brand of toothpaste, or the right brand of anything?
I was listening to another, I don't know if you ever heard of her, Anita Morjani, and Wayne Dyer brought her up. She was experienced a near-death situation, and I know we've brought about up before where we talked about thinking as being your sixth sense, and so she brought up speaking of intuition, brought up an interesting way of looking at it. Like, if we were all born and told to close our eyes and never to open them, and that our sense of intuition and that kind of that people get, we have no language for, and people poo-poo it or push it aside or think you're some sort of woo-woo person, and paid more attention to our intuitive and almost telepathic skills. That but if you were told to close your eyes and never to open them, then you would not have the language to describe things because you've never seen them. And then everything, technology and everything would be designed to help us survive in that kind of world, but we'd have a better understanding of our, but it's just like a different way of looking at why we can't presence or talk about or label things that are intuitive, that are part of our being. We just have ignored them since the dawn of man, basically. So it'd be interesting if we paid that much more attention to that aspect of our lives.
It's remarkable. And you do realize that we're always under siege in terms of language domination, that there is a move afoot at all times to try to control the thinking direction of millions and billions of people by changing the language, what it means. By changing the language, the boundaries on it, what can be said, what cannot be said. And the idea of, if we were told to keep our eyes closed, that there's something that comes out of that where some other sense gets more muscle, it gets stronger, it now takes up the slack, it kind of fills in the blanks. I think a lot of that is happening for people. I think there are a lot of people who are basically saying, I think maybe our old language in many areas is just used up. If it's confusing and if it has more than one meaning in any conversation and it doesn't seem to be context sensitive any longer, perhaps it's time to just step aside from those conversations and move into something where we can find agreement and where there's a place for us to start together and define terms that work for both of us and give us this opportunity to grow together and to create a world that works.
I was also I stumbled upon an old Buddhist practice. I don't know, Ken, if you've ever heard it, because it's pronounced Huao To, but when you look at it, it could be how to.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's translated to word head, or the source of the spoken word, and how to never to, like we've always talked about, to being curious about not accepting the common definition of it, looking beyond that, looking beyond the spoken word, and then go into your intuition and belief, and not even your belief, but to ignore your beliefs even and question those. You know, just like we've talked about before too, the intense curiosity of, why do I believe this, and where did it come from, and then just excuse it completely.
It's remarkable. You know that who was it? I think it was Mark Twain who said, it's absolutely impossible. Oh, you can fool people, but you can't ever convince them that they've been fooled. And you know, the fact of the matter is that you and I and most of the other folks have to trust at some point their wiring and their programming. And when something is not making sense, or if something is not jiving, at some point, the winner is the one who says it most frequently and with the most conviction, in the face of having so much evidence that there's no truth to it whatsoever. And I think this is one of those things where the thinking person, as you said, can drop back and drop out of the conversation, maybe observe, maybe be inquisitive and see if there's something to be learned in the instance. However, make a decision very quickly on if it's a waste of your time, and if it's just a cotton candy conversation, or if there's clearly something going on here that's not good for children and other living things. And if that's the case, you can get back to talking about what your resolutions for 2022 are. Do you have any, Ken or Lisa?
Oh, New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, I gave up on. I like to. I don't think I really don't think they're helpful in so many instances. Like Ken was saying, I'd rather do small incremental changes throughout the year and celebrate those, constantly, than have one time of the year that I'm gonna probably disappoint myself, and or add something to your life that's good. I'd rather see that kind of thing. I mean, to keep doing more of what is helpful to me, kind of thing, but it's my ongoing resolution.
What are the odds that none of the three of us made any New Year's resolutions whatsoever?
Huge.
I guess we talk to each other frequently. What's going on with that? But we have this kind of, we got into a Christmas tradition every single year. I don't remember the last time that my wife Janet and I bought gifts for each other at Christmas time. And there's no reason for that, except for we don't need anything. And to take one time of the year and go, flipping crazy, and like trying to, impress or express or all that sort of thing for each other, we're sort of over that. We've been playing house for 47 years. And at some point, we just kind of evolved into, if we see something that we think there's some mutual satisfaction with during the course of the year, or something we want to do for ourselves pretty much any time. We might even just share it out loud. I think I'm going to get a new pair of shoes, or, I think I'm going to go do this, or I think I'm going to go do that. And what the other one says is kind of like our right, left, and straight game. The other one says, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that? you know? And so,
Say it's for me.
yeah, it's almost like when you live alone, you know, there's nobody else to check in with to see whether there's any merit to your idea of what you're going to do next, until you have some trusted friends that you can bring into the circle. And then sometimes you can actually go out and on a limb and share something that's quite meaningful to you, or something that you feel a little sheepish telling people about. But Lisa infected me with the growing things deal. She had Corny, which I fell in love with Corny, and I have lamented his demise, and I'm assuming that he's really not made it through the last 2 or 3 weeks with the freaking weather.
He is not. He is not. He's in the great cornfield in the sky.
And as a result of that, I now have basil, and basil is my basil plant, and basil is actually doing pretty well. I'm using a technique of feeding basil water, through the base of the pot, as opposed to pouring it in from the top.
Yeah.
However, when basil goes away, I'm going to have Fluffy. I've decided the name of my next basil plant. Lisa gave me this wonderful gift of a vase that has some medium, and then you put the seeds in it, and then it grows these beautiful basil plants. And it looks to me like, I went online to see what it looks like when it's full grown, and there's also a little picture there. So I'm going to call it Fluffy, because it just looks like it's going to be like beautiful and large and great. And I'll always have something to remind me of you every single day.
That's excellent.
It's great. So the practice of starting something new, in terms of looking at the year and time as if it were a new starting thing, I'm kind of interested in where that came from, and at the whole notion of why so many people rigorously practice this, New Year's resolution thing, and all of the other celebrations that go on towards the end of the year. And then, we're not done yet. We just recently had the Epiphany, and we got Three Kings Day. I mean, we're not done with people having celebrations about this. And I think that's wonderful. I think it's absolutely magnificent that people have these time-based timeouts for really celebrating and clearing their heads and getting together and loving each other,
Because I don't think people do it enough on their own, so it's good things to have reminders. But also, all I could think of was like when man first began, and the days were getting shorter and shorter, and there was like less and less light, and then all of a sudden it started, and then they go, "We're not going to die. Let's do something. We have to do something new, different next year."
That's fun.
Well, and isn't it cool as a community if you have some kind of a focal point or an agreement? Like I remember when we would do a lot with the martial arts school around the Chinese New Year. We built some programs to kind of, it was just a fun thing to play with, and and the school teachers all liked it. But one of the things I ran across was in China, and I don't know if this still holds true, but the death rate would drop significantly in the weeks leading up to the celebration of the new year. And then it would course correct afterwards. Like the death rate would go up significantly. And it was just something that people were willing to hold on for. It was kind of like there was another study about, more heart attacks happen at 9 a.m. on Monday mornings because people would really rather die than go back to work, and and less people die on the weekends. So it's like, and that was just an agreement we made that we go to work on Mondays and we don't go to work on the weekends. I mean, it's completely a social construct, but because so many of us agreed to it for so long, it created that sense of, being part of a community where you're celebrating these things together. So, so in Western society, in a lot of countries,